1977, the air smelled like champagne and sadness. The city was dominated by rock stars. Guys with crazy hair, velvet coats, and egos the size of their amps. Stevie Nicks, who was at the top of the music industry with Fleetwood Mac, saw the devastation develop around her. She had seen how celebrity could turn love into obsession and friends into enemies. Now, decades later, she finally tells the truth about the 7 men who made that crazy decade what it was. These weren't just famous people. They were heartbreakers, manipulators, and masters of devastation who left scars deeper than their melodies. For Stevie, it all started with the man who knew her best, loved her the most, and damaged her the most. It began not far from home. Stevie's relationship with Lindsey Buckingham was both wonderful and crazy. They met as dreamers and lovers, united by music and ambition, but when they became successful, their love turned into war. By the time Rumors was recorded, their love had turned into fights and silent revenge. Lindsey was a great guitarist, but he was also really mean when he wasn't on stage. He wanted to be in charge of the music, the band, and her. Stevie witnessed a man who could write about pain like poetry yet live it like a sword. Their fight would shape Fleetwood Mac for decades, with each show full of love and anger. And while she sought to get away from the pain of that breakup, she fell into the arms of another man. He looked calm on the outside, but his heart was composed of ice. Think of Don Henley, the Eagles' sharp-eyed perfectionist. He was a poet of California's dark beauty to the rest of the globe. People who knew him said he was impossible to please. Stevie was attracted to him in the late 1970s, and they had a short romance that was fueled by celebrity and passing feelings. But Henley's attractiveness was only skin deep. Underneath it all was calculation and distance. He was always in charge, even when he looked both ways. The affair ended in agony and distance, and Stevie was disappointed with the very scene she helped create. Henley was facing his own problems, like jealousy, artistic arrogance, and the slow death of a band that was built on competition. Stevie wanted something true, something wild and unfettered after Henley. At that point, she met Joe Walsh, a man who lived every day as if it were his last. Henley was not like Joe Walsh at all. Funny, reckless, and tender in ways you wouldn't expect. Stevie thought he was anarchy in human form, and that was exactly what made him so appealing. She said he was the love of her life, but their connection was like gasoline on an open flame. Lovely, short-lived, and sure to end in ash. Walsh was a great guitarist, but he was also a troubled person who was addicted, guilty, and always wanted to get away from himself. I was chatting to your brother-in-law about it last night. Yes. Regarding the fact that when you were in Fleetwood Mac, you were in this really good band that has been together since 1975. When they met, he was already deep in a haze of drug usage. His laughing covered his tiredness, and his eyes showed a grief that no music could hide. Their nights together were crazy, full of laughing, secrets, and long drives through Los Angeles at dawn. The two of them sped down empty highways with the windows down, thinking they could flee their anguish. There were times when they felt completely connected, when the world seemed to stop and their souls seemed to be in sync. But those times never lasted. Behind every sweet grin were crashes, missed shows, mood swings, and long silences where love couldn't reach him. Stevie tried to help him, but instead she got sucked deeper into his storm. To love Joe was to dance on the edge of death. And when she eventually left, she felt like a part of her heart was missing. But heartbreak always seemed to find her. The next man in her story wasn't just a boyfriend. He was her bandmate, her secret, and the reason she fell apart. Fleetwood Mac's rhythm buried its biggest secret. Stevie Nicks and Mick Fleetwood had an affair. It started in the calm times between the Rumors, when both were dealing with broken relationships and unsaid tiredness. Late hours in the studio turned into confessions whispered over dark lights and half-empty cups of brandy. Mick, who was big and authoritative behind his drums, was lonely in a way that was similar to her own. He was married and troubled by fame, but he found consolation in Stevie's soft warmth. What began as a brief escape quickly became a dangerous addiction. They needed each other like air, but they knew it would cost them a lot. Their love was both wonderful and terrible. Every furtive look during rehearsals and every note sung too near made the band even more tense, which was already straining at the seams. When the truth came out, friendships broke apart like broken glass, and Fleetwood Mac's strength, their unity, fell apart beneath the weight of their emotions. Stevie and Micks's love burned out quickly. And when it was over, it left scars that would never heal. But even though they broke up, their chemistry lingered on in the music. Fleetwood Mac conflict was all over the news, but there was another kind of storm developing outside of their group. One led by the unstable poet David Crosby from Laurel Canyon. David Crosby was the philosopher of rock. He had a sharp mind and a sharp tongue, but his personal life was a mess. Stevie met him in the mid-1970s in Laurel Canyon, where musicians moved between studios and homes like ghosts looking for inspiration. Crosby's charisma was smart, his chats were addictive, and his laughter was deep and infectious. He acted like a poet, always surrounded by smoke, guitars, and the faint confusion of too many ideas crashing into each other. He always seemed to be living in a dream, always chasing something he could never quite catch. But B saw through that calm facade and saw anarchy, a storm of destruction and impulse. His drug usage and cheating on women had already cost him friends and almost his job. Stevie saw him fall apart right in front of her. The never-ending parties where everyone acted like they were all right. The times when he would become angry during recording sessions. The stairs are empty after too many nights of too much powder and not enough sleep. It was like witnessing the decade itself fall apart under the weight of its own excess as Crosby became worse. And soon Stevie would meet another kind of legend, one whose pain reflected her own, shrouded in the haunting music of the blues. Stevie met Eric Clapton when he was already a living legend. A man who could make a guitar cry but couldn't figure out how to fix his own heart. His appeal was so strong that it made him feel good. His voice was sad, and his eyes were full of secrets that fame could never cover. He was a master of blues and the man who turned suffering into poetry. No one could touch him. But when the cameras weren't rolling, his life was full of treachery and remorse. When Stevie saw him, she saw a man who was haunted by his own story. A star who has it all and nothing at the same time. His affairs with renowned ladies made the top page. But behind the headlines were evenings of silence, medications, and an unceasing search for purpose. There was a lot of tension between them, a peculiar bond between two people who knew all too well what celebrity cost. Clapton's experience was like her own, the loneliness that comes with praise and the pain that comes with being a genius. But Clapton's melancholy was hidden in blues, whereas Bob Welch's sadness was hidden in quiet tragedy. Bob Welch was the link between Fleetwood Mac's blues roots and their rise to popularity. Stevie really looked up to him as a musician and as a kind person who had the same ghosts as she did. He wasn't as noisy or rude as the other people in their group. He was very creative, caring, and attentive. Bob's musical taste changed Fleetwood Mac's sound, setting them on a road that would eventually lead to worldwide success. But as success became closer, problems at work, new people coming in, and disputes with other people pushed him away. Stevie realized that his modest genius was being drowned out by egos that were bigger than his own. Bob's leaving the band in 1974 wasn't just a resignation, it was a tragedy. The gang kept going, getting closer to becoming superstars, while Bob stayed behind to watch. He tried to start over, but the world forgot about him too quickly. Then came depression, which slowly took over every part of his existence. His narrative was a heartbreaking reminder of what celebrity may do to you. Not simply success, but also peace, identity, and dignity. Years later, when he heard the news of his death, it hit Stevie like an unfinished song. A poem with no harmony. And as she stood alone in the silence that followed, she knew that all the men she had known, friends, lovers, and rivals, were more than just stories from her past. They were the ghosts of a time that had burned too brightly. The sparkle had turned to dust by the end of the decade. The brilliant lights of Los Angeles, which used to mean hope and endless nights, now reminded me of everything I had lost. The 1970s gave Stevie everything: fame, love, and immortality. But they also took away much. Her voice, which was the heartbeat of a generation, told stories of men and memories that had left her with scars. She had seen the people she loved descend into excess, ego, addiction, and the false sense of greatness. Every name Carrie is a ghost. Every song is a confession hidden behind the rhythm and rhyme. Lindsay's anger, which was tinged with guilt, and Joe's laughing, which faded into stillness. In her songs, they lived on forever. The 70s womanizers weren't simply in love. They were signs of a time when desire was stronger than reason and success ate away at the soul. Years later, when Stevie was on stage and the crowd was going wild, she knew the truth. She had lived longer than all of them. Not in pride, but in strength. The men she had previously loved had become legends and ghosts, stuck in their own stories. She had transformed her anguish into poetry. Imagine this. The stage was empty, the lights were lowered, and the echoes faded into silence. Everything, the love, the anger, the music, was in the past. Still, in the quiet, Stevie Nicks stood under the last of the lights, her shawl brushing against the floor, and her eyes were full of memories of all the songs she'd ever sang. She had survived the fire and come out stronger. By sharing the story of people who burned too brightly, she had finally set herself